An official welcome and good morning, everyone. My name is David Corey. I work with the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, which is a small company. There are six of us. We've got some coaches and trainers that work with us, and we are primarily based in and focus on Western Canada. However, we work all over the country and end up working all over the world as well on both the assessment of EQ, the coaching of EQ with managers, and the design and delivery of customized training and development programs for primarily for leadership development based on the concept of emotional intelligence wherever that is requested. So let's get going. And this webinar that you've tuned into, of course, is called the Top 10 Reasons to Use the EQI 2.0 and the EQ 360 2.0 as well. And the photograph there on the first slide is a photograph of a group of people that attended a certification course to use the EQI and the EQ 360. And that particular group is a group in Toronto. And that was taken last year. To begin is to talk a little bit about this concept of emotional intelligence. As many of you probably know, emotional intelligence gained popularity when a book by the same name was released by Daniel Goleman in 1995. That's where it really exploded in popularity. The book was on the top of the New York Times bestseller list, and people read about and became interested in this concept of emotional intelligence. Let's take a look at the next slide here. And I saw this cartoon in the Vancouver Sun one day, and I thought it was interesting. Of course, it's funny because here's a woman saying to her husband, "Don't worry so much about the job interview. You'll be fine. Just pretend you're likable and competent." And it's funny because she says, "Pretend you're likable and competent," but it's interesting because she is actually pointing out the two component parts that we human beings bring with us into every situation. On the one hand, we've got our technical competency. These are the skills and the knowledge that we've gained through our various training courses and our education. And then on the other hand, there's this idea about being likable, which is really quite interesting that she's pointing this out, because if we are responsible for hiring someone and we've narrowed it down to two candidates with similar sets of competencies, we're going to hire the one that we like. And there are certain things that will cause someone to be more likable than someone else. And this is an interesting thing to think about, because it begs the question, could we, with intention, set out to be more likable? That is, to be more attractive, more interesting, more engaging, more dynamic, compelling to other people. And of course, the answer is yes, but we just don't think of it in that way. As parents, we want our children to be likable children. We want them to have friends. We want them to easily have relationships with others. But we don't set out in a systematic way to teach the skills that are required in order to be that likable person. So let's think a little bit more about this and talk more about this concept of emotional intelligence. For example, where did it come from? Well, in terms of a brief history of emotional intelligence, we'll just walk you through the brief history of emotional intelligence. We'll talk a bit about a definition of emotional intelligence, introduce you to the model that the EQI is based on, and then I'll give you the top 10 reasons why I think the EQI 2.0 is such a great tool to use. So in terms of the brief history, one of the interesting things when we look at prehistoric human beings is this idea of that emotion predates cognition. And how we know that are the kinds of studies that are done where they have used carbon dating techniques to determine that the emotional parts of the brain of these prehistoric people are actually older than the cognitive, the parts of the brain that are responsible for cognition. So that's I think that's quite fascinating. Then we've got some early writings. Back to this idea of early writings about emotional intelligence. Right around 300 BC, Aristotle wrote, "To be angry is easy, but to be angry with the right person at the right time and the right amount for the right reason, that's difficult." And Aristotle was really referring to this concept of appropriate emotional expression, which is absolutely a component of emotional intelligence. In the 20th century, we see that many psychologists are taking what psychologists are learning from their research and putting it into lay terms so average everyday people can understand what that means as well. So throughout the 20th century, you've got many psychologists. This is the growth of what we call pop psychology, popular psychology, where psychologists are taking what they've learned and introducing it to the masses. In 1985, Reuven Bar-On coined the term EQ and referenced what he called emotional and social functioning. That was fairly revolutionary. He was really wanting to put EQ, or the measure of emotional and social functioning, in a way that his fellow psychologists could relate to. So EQ versus IQ, which of course is intelligence quotient, which refers to a measure of one's cognitive intelligence. In 1990, Mayer and Salovey coined the term emotional intelligence for the first time. Bar-On, who's been researching it in terms of emotional intelligence researchers, has been involved the longest, never used the term emotional intelligence until after it was popularized by Goleman in 1995. 95, Goleman writes his famous book. 1997, the EQI is published, the first scientific measure of emotional intelligence in the world. In 2003, the EQ360 was published by Multi Health Systems, the largest publisher of psychometrics in Canada. In 2011, the EQI and the EQ360 undergo radical updates to create the 2.0 versions of both instruments. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that as well. So here's a definition. Emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive, understand, manage, and use emotions to facilitate thinking. And this comes from the guys who coined the term emotional intelligence in the first place, Jack Mayer and Peter Salovey. Jack Mayer of the University of New Hampshire and Peter Salovey of Yale University. So that's the actual definition. Now, this definition and their subsequent measure, their psychometric instrument, is not as useful, in my humble opinion, as another measure, which the other measure actually is a measure of skills and competencies that we can work on as coaches and as trainers and consultants in the workplace for improved individual and organizational effectiveness. So let's look at that model. This is the updated model that was created by Multi Health Systems based on the original work of Reuven Bar-On. And right there at the very center, we've got this concept of emotional intelligence, which in brief terms is, and going back to our definition that I just showed you, is about the idea that the brain processes emotions and emotional information in addition to the wonderful cognitive processing that our brains are capable of. Following out from that center emotional intelligence, that is the idea that the brain processes emotions, are all of these skills and competencies that are related to and built on emotional intelligence and divided up into categories. Of course, the EQI was designed to measure one's level of competencies in these various areas. So we've got the categories of self-perception, for example, which, if you think about this in developmental terms, self-perception is that moment in time when we as infants realize that those fingers waving in front of our eyes are actually us. And we move from self-expression, again, developmentally, if you want to think about it this way, into self-expression. So once we have some sense of self, then we move into the sense of self-expression. And again, as infants, I'm hungry, I'm cranky, I'm tired, whatever, I need to be changed, is part of self-expression. And then as we get older, of course, there are other types of expressions. Then we realize that, of course, these expressions are for interpersonal reasons, the development of relationships, communication, etc. Other aspects of the emotional intelligence skills and competencies include decision making, the fact that we're making decisions continuously from the moment that we awake until the moment that we fall asleep. And then, of course, stress management is there because stress is a critical component of life, and something that that we have to find a way to deal with. We have to find a way to tolerate it. We have to find a way to be flexible with it, and find ways of making sure that it doesn't take us out. It doesn't take us off our quest to reach our objectives and goals, but that we manage that in some way. In the outer ring, we see the term well-being, and of course, a sense of well-being is a critical part of mental wellness, emotional wellness, and it's there. And then in the outer ring, we've got emotional and social functioning, which is again Reuven Bar-On's original interest and his original focus of study. And we see performance is there as well. And this is based on the idea that we have lots of studies demonstrating that EQ and these competencies are related to performance in the workplace. Reason number 10, and this is now the top 10 reasons to use the EQI. We're going in order of what may be seen to be least important to most important, just like David Letterman. And reason number 10 is that the EQI 2.0 is available in a multi-rater version. And the multi-rater version is, of course, where the Ray T takes the EQI, and the Ray T identifies raters belonging to various rater groups. Again, the idea is 360 degrees around someone, hence the term 360. And this is a very common thing to do in senior leadership development, and a very important piece of creating and developing self-awareness for leaders. And it's a fantastic coaching tool that we use in our work with senior leaders. So that's reason number 10, that it has the flexibility to be used both as a self-report measure and also as a multi-rater tool. Reason number 9 is that the EQI 2.0 is considered to be based on one of the first of 3 top models of emotional intelligence in the world, according to the psychological literature. Now, I've had the question according to which psychological literature, and if you're interested in that, I can certainly send you a reference. But a lot of psychology books now that are used in university, if you look up emotional intelligence, they will tell you that there are 3 top models of emotional intelligence in the world. One of which is the one that again where the term was coined for the first time. That's the Mayer-Salovey model, 1990, a journal article in a periodical where they first talked about emotional intelligence, and that is considered to be one of the 3 top models. Then there is the Bar-On model, which is also mentioned, and interestingly, the Bar-On model predates the model that was first theorized by Mayer and Salovey. However, again, Bar-On never used the term emotional intelligence in his early work. And then there is what is referred to as the Goleman model, which again came out in Goleman's book in 1995. However, Goleman took what Mayer and Salovey and Bar-On were working on and created his own model, loosely based on the competencies, the workplace competencies that are found in the Hay Group's generic competency dictionary of workplace competencies. So it's very much a workplace competency model, if you will, and that is the other or the third model. So so Bar-On's was really the first, if you look at it chronologically, and And again, he called his model a model of emotional and social functioning. So really, we're interested in what people actually do. And we're interested in their EQ because their EQ reflects and predicts and tells us something about where people's strengths may be and where their areas for opportunity may be in development terms. And so this is reason number 9. Reason number 8 is that the EQI is available in a variety of report types for a variety of purposes. And at the moment, the EQI version 1.0 is being phased out, and the EQI 1.0 has had a number of report types available. For example, a general report where EQ results were put into general language for a variety of purposes. That was called the resource report. Then there is the workplace report, which takes EQ results and puts that in business language, workplace language. That's called the business report. And then there was the 65-page leadership report, which put EQ results in terms of and related to a model of leadership, which was created by the Center for Creative Leadership. Now, in the 2.0 version, which came out in 2011, there is, at the moment, there is just the workplace report, and there will soon be other reports following where, again, these will be created for other purposes. There, in the previous version, the 1.0 version, there was a post-secondary report and a youth version, and my guess is that all of these will be updated, and there will be more reports available. Reason number 7 is that the EQI is based on the most researched emotional intelligence measure on the market, the EQI 1.0. And this was discussed in a paper that came out in the Journal of Organizational Behavior in 2010, which was a meta-analysis of all of the studies of measures of emotional intelligence that have been used to predict performance in the workplace, to understand performance in the workplace, and again, this EQI 1.0 began as Dr. Bar-On's doctoral research in 1980, and has been used in countless PhD and master's studies all over the world ever since. The Center for Creative Leadership chose the EQI 1.0 as its EQ measure for its research properties, and that was discussed in a study, in an extensive study that was done looking at leaders and leadership. And if you're interested in either of those papers, either the meta-analysis or the CCL research study, I'm happy to send those papers to you. Research number 6 is that Multi-Health Systems Incorporated, MHS, based in Toronto, Ontario, the publisher of the EQI, is the largest publisher of psychometrics in Canada. Stephen Rodin Stein started Multi-Health Systems in their basement in 1983, and quickly, and based on their observation that psychologists used a lot of assessments and tests in their work. However, they had to go to the US to get those, and so they decided to become a publisher and a distributor of psychometrics in Canada. And they have invested heavily in research and development of all of their measures, and the EQI happens to be one of those measures, and of course now the EQI 2.0 and the EQ360 2.0. And this, for you, what that means, if you plan to use the EQI, is that this is established credibility for your clients. Reason number 5 is that the EQI was the first measure on the market, specifically for the assessment of emotional intelligence skills. It was the first EQ measure that was mentioned in the Burroughs Book of Mental Measurements, which is kind of like the Bible of psychometrics. And so because it was the first to market, it has many first to market advantages, such as best-selling, most researched, most available languages, best geographic representation, most books and support resources available. And this is going to be important to you if you're using it in your work. You can say that it was the first, etc., and that it is the best-selling, most widely used, most available in in other languages. And on the other languages idea, it's important to mention that the 2.0 is available in English and French, of course, our two official languages here in Canada, and it will be available in a wide variety of other languages as those translations get completed. For the 1.0, you can take it in something like 22 different languages, and you can get reports in a number of different languages. But with the 2.0, the only options right now, presently, are French and English. I understand Spanish is coming online very soon, and then you'll see again a number of languages as those translations get completed. Reason number 4 is that the EQI 2.0 is an excellent addition to personality type indicators. Personality type indicators are popular for use in the corporate world. They're a fantastic measure of preferences and tendencies, and a great way to help develop self-awareness for people. However, personality type indicators don't necessarily tell you about competency. For example, you probably know of or have heard of people who operate out of preference very successfully and very effectively. However, with the EQI, we're really interested in competency. So how well do people function in these various areas using these various EQ skills? So basically together, if you're using a personality type indicator and the EQI, this is a very comprehensive, very powerful test battery that you can use, which will provide a great deal of value to your client for development purposes, or provide a great deal of information for use in hiring. So that's reason number 4. Reason number 3 is that the EQI 2.0 can rapidly accelerate the coaching process. As a skilled coach, you'll probably get there, and you will have these deep and meaningful conversations. But with the EQI, it's quite surprising. You can go deep fast, and you can have those deep and meaningful conversations in the very first meeting, because the EQI gets right to the heart of the matter. Pardon the pun. The EQI has this amazing ability to zero in on what it is that are creating limitations for clients, and zero in on what are areas of strength that people can leverage. And this saves valuable time versus trying to do this without a model or a map to follow, a framework, a set of guidelines, just to begin your coaching. Sure, you'll get there, and you will have a similar outcome. But again, the EQI just provides that wonderful framework and that fantastic way that that you can understand where a person is, and meet them at that place. Reason number 2 is that, as I mentioned, the EQI 1.0, which we've been using for 13 years, has undergone these quite dramatic renovations that propel it out in front even further as the market leader. It was the market leader, and now it's even taken a greater lead. So some of those changes and some of those renovations include the renorming of the instrument. So a new group of 4,000 people were found and chosen for the norming of the EQI 2.0, and that norm most closely approximates the North American census data. We also, in addition to general norms, that is, people who come from a variety of backgrounds, both working and non-working, students and non-students, we now have a group that have been identified as professionals. So we have a professional norm. So that's nice to be able to compare working professionals with other working professionals. That's a really nice way to do a comparison. Now the model has been updated in the process. So various issues and concerns that have cropped up over the years, both statistically and from a usability perspective, have been fed back to the research and development team from MHS, and they have actually changed and updated and modified the model so it improves usability. So it's more user-friendly, it's more intuitive, people understand and they get it right away, and that's been really wonderful to see that. The report format has been overhauled dramatically. So now we see much more information per page. We don't see as much information repeated throughout as we did in the previous report. And what's wonderful for me as a coach and someone who's working directly with people with their EQI results, the actual items and people's responses are included in the coaches section of the report. So we have that, and we have that to use. And so when people have trouble understanding their results or aren't really quite sure what it was that we have measured, we're able to go right back to their response, their choice of response, and talk with them about a particular statement which may be problematic for them or lead to a deeper or more meaningful conversation. The web interface has been overhauled. There's a completely new system. It was formerly called the MHS Scoring Organizer, and now it's called the MHS Portal. And it's a fabulous, intuitive, user-friendly system which does a number of things. So there's also a social network built in there to network with other EQ professionals. There's a resource library. There's several marketing resources. There's all kinds of articles and publications related to EQ research and study on that system. So while the EQI was great to use, it's now just that much more great to use. It's excellent, and of course we're very excited. We've used the EQI for a number of months now. Well, a whole year. The EQI 2.0 we've used for the past year, and we just can't understand why anyone would possibly use the 1.0 or continue to want to use the 1.0 after they've seen the 2.0 in action. And of course, provided that it is available in the language that they need it available in. Reason number one is a bit of a summary. It kind of summarizes what we've been talking about, that the EQI 2.0 is a scientifically valid, reliable assessment of emotional intelligence skills that can be developed. You can't necessarily say that about other measures that are available on the market. Some measures have no claim to being scientifically valid. They are simply a process that you take people through to gain a deeper understanding of their emotional intelligence skills and competencies. But when you're looking for a scientifically valid assessment, something that's reliable, something that has a lot of research and publications behind it, then you probably want the EQI 2.0. These are skills that can be developed, so it's fantastic for coaches, trainers, consultants, HR managers, etc. Greatly assist clients to gain awareness of their strengths and areas for developmental focus. And I think it's quite fascinating that when people realize that they've created these results, that they're the result of their own responses, that basically we've asked them 133 times. That's the number of statements, or more precisely in psychometric terms, test items that one must go through in order to complete the EQI. So we've asked people 133 times to tell us about them, and they've done that. And then it's a matter of reviewing those results with people and asking them to validate those results every step of the way, and then to realize that those areas which are lower scoring areas for them are potential areas for development. And if they're really going to economically get a return on investment, it's looking at those lower scoring areas and how those can be pulled up. Of course, we also want to leverage strengths, and the idea of focusing on strengths is a good one, but without addressing or looking at and facing what might potentially be the truth of a lower scoring area, then clients could potentially continue to get tripped up by the same barriers to their own improvement, their own effectiveness. And so we really do want to look at lower scoring areas as well. So that really brings us to the end of the presentation, and we've got a few minutes for there's